Hi guys, Hamster here. I wanted to share a product with you guys that this is something that I have absolutely fallen in love with. I've been looking to upgrade the trigger in my AR and looking at all the different options out there, and this is one I chose, and I've had some time to test, and I gotta say I'm thoroughly pleased with this trigger. And the trigger that I installed was the Geissele Super Semi-Automatic, or SSA trigger. And this trigger, I gotta say, is phenomenal. Some things about this trigger. It is a two-stage trigger, and I gotta say it is extremely smooth and a great clean break. This thing is just excellent. And let me give you a little information about this trigger and why it's so easy. This trigger can be installed by you. This trigger is not hard to do. All you need is just a decent 5/32 punch and a small hammer, and that's it. Installation time took me about 10 minutes to install the trigger, to remove the old trigger and install the new trigger. So if you have a small hammer and punch, and you're not going to need much of the hammer, basically just a good punch did most of the work. That's all you need. You do not need a gunsmith to install this. You can do this yourself. Did not have to remove the safety on the lower receiver. Push 2 pins, install 2 pins. Pretty simple. What made it more difficult for me was my Magpul bad lever had to be removed so I could push out the trigger pin. I literally spent more time removing this and installing this than I did doing the trigger. So this was a piece of cake. And when I had the trigger out, I cleaned the lower receiver out since everything was out. I spent more time cleaning and dealing with the bad lever than I did the trigger. Let's give you a look at a Geissele SSA trigger. And this is what you get here. I'll talk a little bit about this. This trigger is made from high quality steel. This is basically a very nice piece of equipment here. Let's get a look at this. This is kind of, hopefully that will focus in. This is a beautiful trigger and hammer, and it comes with new pins and a little item called a slave pin, which makes this installation extremely quick and simple, and a small vial of grease to lubricate everything. So this thing performs kind of like a match trigger, except this is a combat rated trigger. This is not a bench rest trigger. This trigger is designed basically as a combat trigger. So this is not going to be like a match grade competition trigger, but it's going to feel like it compared to the mil-spec trigger. Every part on this thing has a lot number or serial number. So their quality control on this is fantastic. To start with, this is made out of high quality tool steel, and it's double tempered and cryogenically treated down to -300 degrees. So we got high quality steel, double tempering, and it's been cryo tested or cryo treated. It has a lot number on every part, kind of reminiscent of an aircraft part, where every part of this can be traced back to who did the testing on it, who did what to it. They have full accountability on everybody who touches each part of these triggers. So you have the high quality steel, the tempering, the cryo treatment. The design of the trigger is very similar to the standard mil-spec trigger, and what I mean by that, it installs just like a mil-spec trigger. It has the same number of parts as a mil-spec trigger, so it's pretty simple to put in. The hammer on it is a lightened hammer. So what does that do? That gives you a reduced lock time, which helps improve accuracy. The springs are full power springs. There's no reduced power springs here. You wouldn't know it by pulling the trigger, but these are full power springs, and they have a protective anti-corrosion finish on them. They're good music wire quality springs. And I looked at a case that I had fired with the mil-spec trigger and then one with the Geissele, and the primer impacts looked identical. So you're not going to have any light primer strikes with the Geissele. You're using full power springs, high quality springs with a corrosion coating on them. This trigger is excellent for close quarters combat to mid-range work. For close quarters, you just pull through the trigger like it's a single stage. For your longer range, medium engagements, 300 to 500 yards, you can pull through the first stage, stage it, and then it has a really clean break on that second stage. The first stage has about 2.5 pounds of pull. Second stage breaks at 2 pounds, and it feels really crisp. So total pull weight, 4.5 pounds. The pins themselves that it comes with are extremely high quality pins. The pins are 4140 chromoly steel, and they've been heat treated. So even the pins are high quality. All the parts here too are magnetic particle inspected. So the attention to detail is phenomenal on these. I don't know anybody else who magnetic particle inspects all the trigger components, who has the serial numbers and accountability, the heat treating, the cryo treating. This has a double sear engagement on it. The second sear doesn't normally come into contact with the hammer, but what that does for you is guarantees you an extremely safe trigger. This is not going to go off unless you pull the trigger. So they have other models available. If you're looking for a competition trigger, more of a long-range marksman trigger, they have a lot of different triggers, but the Geissele SSA is a combat trigger that is just, I gotta say, a phenomenal two-stage trigger. It's so easy to install. They come in a large and small pin version, so depending on your weapon, a lot of the weapons are small pin, the 154 diameter, if I remember that correctly. Installation's made pretty simple. You can push the pins out. They give you a slave pin right here, which this pin is smaller, slightly smaller in diameter and shorter. So basically you can push this into your trigger right like this. Push out the pin that they give you, push in the little slave pin, and that allows you to drop the trigger and disconnector in as one unit into your lower receiver. And then you just line everything up, take your new pin, push it in, it will push out the little slave pin. So you won't have to fight trying to line three things up. So the disconnector will be lined up, you'll drop it in as one unit, push your pin in, simple. The hammer spring is a full tension spring, so you're just going to have to take your time, work with it, line it up, and then push the pin in. But extremely high quality steel, beautiful treatment, heat treatment. Another thing that makes this trigger so smooth compared to the mil-spec triggers, a lot of the mil-spec triggers are made by a milling process to machine the sear surfaces. This uses a total different process called, if you remember, it's like a wire EDM process. It's a different process for cutting the sear surfaces, which is much more precise, and it doesn't leave any of the standard milling marks that you would have from a milling process. So that wire EDM cutting leaves a non-directional finish on there. It just leaves a super smooth, precise, clean finish. It's a much more precise way of machining the sear surfaces than using a standard mill. So using the higher processes, the quality control, the heat treating, the cryo treating, the anti-corrosion protection, they give you small directions that come with it right here. They show all the parts, where to lubricate the sear surfaces, the pivot points. On their website they have a 3-part video to go over, basically you can watch Geissele install one of the triggers right there. It's something you definitely can do at home, and I gotta say it made an improvement. I personally have seen my groups tighten up. I definitely saw my groups tighten up, and I definitely saw my rate of fire increase. So I am able to fire faster, and I'm able to definitely tighten my groups up. I just could not be more happy with it. This is something you can definitely do yourself. So this would be an excellent trigger for a dedicated marksman type rifle, but it's perfectly at home for mid-range work and close quarters combat. Like I said, at close range, you just pull the trigger, pull right through both stages. Beautiful trigger. But if you're taking a longer shot, you know, 300, 400, 500 yards, you pull through that first stage and it just stops when it hits that second stage. There's no buildup. It just like pulls, it stops, a little more pressure, clean break. Could not be happier with this trigger. It's such an easy project, such a rewarding project. The only downside they see is once you install this in your lower receiver, you're probably not going to be able to convert back to a mil-spec trigger. Not because it does anything to your lower receiver, it's because you're going to be spoiled once you have this trigger. You're not going to want to go back to a mil-spec trigger. But the fact that it installs the same way, the way the pins are captured, the exact same way, it has the exact same amount of parts. The fact that it has the dual sear surfaces, it makes it completely safe. You will not have an accidental discharge on this. This trigger is also non-adjustable. There's no field adjustment you can do to this. So if this isn't light enough for you, then you need to buy a different trigger that Geissele makes. He makes a modified version of this. He makes a 3-gun trigger. So this trigger is pretty much preset at 4.5 pounds on total pull weight. Like I said, 2.5 pounds on the first stage and 2 pounds on the secondary. And I got I got to say the brake on it is really clean. But I did see my groups tighten up, and if I pull a shot now, it's completely my shot. I can't blame anything on the grittiness or heaviness of the trigger. This trigger is pure joy to shoot. But that's the Geissele SSA Super Semi-Auto Enhanced or Super Semi-Auto trigger. If you're looking for a new trigger for your AR-15, this is something you could definitely do yourself. It installs very easily. So take a look at the Geissele triggers if you're looking for a new trigger. This one's a home run. I think you'll definitely fall in love with it. Thanks for watching.